Welcome to the Grief Files, episode 5. Today I have with me Jerrica Scullawl-Gates. And Jerica is going to talk about the cross section of a number of different griefs happening simultaneously. First of all, her best friend of 40 years, husband of 20 years, received a strange and rare diagnosis that has fundamentally changed him and is also a terminal diagnosis. And this against the backdrop of your mother's passing 2 years ago, traumatically and unexpectedly. So a lot that you're carrying in terms of grief. Thank you for being here and sharing your story.
Well, thank you, Roxy. I'm really glad to reach out to other people because it is a complex dynamic of several different situations. Um, Having a contentious, no, that's not the right word, but anyway, a different type of relationship with my mother, you know.
Yeah.
And then when I actually do need her the most, the problems with my husband that have arisen,
Yeah.
but she's gone.
Yeah.
So I don't have that shoulder advisor
Yeah.
person, that she was. So,
Yeah.
and then on the other hand, with him being the one who's now ill, I can't go to him with a lot of these concerns because I don't want to pile onto what he's going through emotionally or, mentally dealing with his own
Yeah.
medical issues. And
A totally
so,
changed landscape for you in terms of your support. In fact, before we came live, Jerica was explaining she's in her car because she took
mhm,
herself for a massage today, which
yeah.
I applaud. This is
Thank
important,
you.
and that's part of what you're navigating here, isn't it? That's part of the landscape is your support system has radically altered.
Oh, completely. And then since the last time I spoke with you, my oldest son and my foster son and his wife,
Mhm.
they were in Washington, and then my oldest son stayed with me for a while.
Yeah.
They have all purchased a house down probably an hour and a half away.
Oh, wow.
So, I mean,
There.
they're they've gone from 30 hours away to an hour and a half away, but it's still it's like very difficult because I got really used to him being, nearby in that transitional time.
Yeah.
And, but I did get to spend the weekend playing with the grandbaby. So there's that.
Good. Good. I love that. Well, Jerica, before we get into kind of the whole story, and I will invite you to tell us the whole story
Mhm.
if you'd like to. But one of the things that we want to focus on in this show, because I think it's getting missed in grief narratives, is talking about what grief feels like. Um, in a really intimate, granular, like moment by moment sense, rather than just telling the overarching story, but what it feels like to be in it. And I wonder if you can call to mind and take a pause if you need, close your eyes if you want to, call to mind. Let's start with well, either. I'd like to hear a portrait of grief surrounding the loss of your husband as the person you knew, and tell us the scene. Tell us like where you are, an exact moment in time, and describe for us what's happening outside of you, but even more importantly, internally, what are you feeling? What is this grief experiencing as in yourself? And I'd like to hear a moment from your grief of your husband and then another moment of the grief with your mother, and just take us in. We'll just slow it down, we'll zoom in and tell us, where are you and what does grief feel like in your case?
Just a brief overview with my husband. I've had almost a year to process. It'll be a year um, on the 19th. So we're very close to when things really emerged with him, you know,
Yeah.
because he'd been sick for a while and we didn't know it because it was West Nile encephalitis in his brain.
Wow.
And he, because of the infection in his brain and the pressure, he had developed some really out there kind of personality quirks.
Mm,
And the doctors told me later, once we had were into this by several weeks of
mhm.
hospitalization, when they finally found out what it was, they said basically the brain damage is going to be very similar to what someone with dementia is going to go through. So a
Oh,
lot of his symptoms, they were chasing stroke, they were chasing dementia. He had developed this utter, I mean, we can, hatred's not even a strong enough word. Um,
hmm.
his mother and I were just detestable, lower than bugs. Okay. We couldn't do anything right. We couldn't say anything right. His mother had become very upset very easily, and she would say, well, I'm just an immigrant woman with broken English, so I'm just stupid. I'm like, no, mom, you're the smartest person I know. You're fluent in two different languages, and you were brave enough to leave your home, travel 6,000 miles and come to the US following the man you love. No, you're very, very. So I was spending a lot of time trying to lift her up
Wow.
and meeting with an attorney on the side because I was getting ready to divorce him because I'm like, I love him. I'm not going to be treated like this.
Yeah.
I am young enough to go out in the world and survive on my own.
Wow.
And oh, yeah, I bought the house before we were married, so it's my house, so I knew I wouldn't lose my house. I
Yeah.
mean, it's
Yeah.
silly, but I actually had a couple of friends of mine who had, you know, we were sitting at the bowling alley of all places, doing a laundry list of assets and everything, how to put this stuff together because he was just being a monster, right? And
Wow.
then he came home from work, December 19th. And he came home from work, and I'm sitting in the bedroom on my iPad, and he flops across the bed backwards, and he's staring at the ceiling, and he says, I can't do this anymore. And I'm thinking, okay, so you're going to pull the plug. And I said, why, honey? What happened?
Yeah.
And I closed my iPad because I'm still trying to, but like I said, I'm not going to be treated like dirt either.
Yeah.
And he says, I had a whole bunch of money in my hand, and I had customers lined up at the register in front of me and at the register behind me, and the register drawer was open, and the bank bag for the night drop was open. And he said, but I didn't know what to do with this money. Well, the particular retail industry he works in, it would be nothing for him to have. When he says a lot of money, he might have had a couple $1,000. He could have had $20 or $2,000 in his hand that he couldn't figure out what to do. And
Wow.
he used to. Um, he's been the operations manager of several different companies. He's been a business partner in two different companies, and in the security and uh, corporate security and oil industry. So he's not dumb,
Yeah.
and he's not. And his first job, our first job, all of us, the whole group of us from high school, the whole high school swim team, our first job was in the concession stand at the Speedway working for Charlie's Chicken. So
Wow.
we've all been handling money since we were 16. We've and he's couldn't figure that out. And then as the
Mm.
evening progressed and we continued to talk, he told me that he had gotten confused coming home from work a couple of days back prior to that. And I
Oh,
said, well, how? Because we live in one town, he lives in the next town, or he works in the next town over. It is a 7 mile straight shot from where he worked to our driveway.
yeah.
It's two right turns and a
Yeah.
7 mile straight shot. And he was two towns over in next county. He had got lost. Okay, now we all grew up in this area, so we know all the back roads, everything. And he's
Oof.
25, 30 miles in the wrong direction,
Yeah.
the next county over. And I'm like, okay, there's actually really a problem.
Mm-hmm.
So I got him to engage and do some more talking. And as we're talking, I notice he's either using words in the wrong context or he's not finding them at all. And he's doing this thing on his hand where he's going, like this. And I'm like, what is this? And he goes, well, my circle, my circle. I gotta find my circle. Don't interrupt me. I mean, if I sneezed, he would start the whole conversation over. And
Wow.
I'm going, so the more I watch him and the more I listen, I'm thinking, he's having a stroke.
Hmm.
So I run him to the closest uh, urgent care.
Yeah.
We weren't there 30 minutes, and they tell me, you get him to a hospital in town. They said, don't go to one of the ones here in the smaller, the suburb. Go to the big hospital in town. So we take off, and we go to the hospital in town. Well, unfortunately, I went to the closest hospital, which is in downtown. They
Okay.
see a lot of transient and homeless people.
Okay.
And they kept asking me, well, what's he drinking? What's he taking? What's he drinking? What's he taking? And I'm like, nothing. This man is he's a store manager. He has employees. He's always been in, responsible situation. He's not, he doesn't, I mean, it's like a beer on the weekend is about it for him. I said, we've still, okay, this is December 19th when all this is going on.
Yeah.
We had bought a case of beer for our New Year's party the
Hmm.
year before. We still had two of those in the fridge. This is how much we drink, okay? It takes
Yeah.
us a year to drink a case of beer,
Yeah.
even with holidays. And I'm like, you don't understand. He didn't, no, no.
Yeah.
And they kept going back to, oh, well, he must have. And then he says something. They said, well, how does this feel? And he says, well, it feels like, you know, how when you like smoke your first joint, it feels like that weird feeling, but I can't make it go away. So they put on his records he was a marijuana user, and I'm going, he was 17 when
Oh,
he did that, because we
well,
had talked about that before, especially as our kids got into that age group
yeah.
where, like, and
Yeah.
so, but they had been, so there was a whole ordeal that went on with that, with me trying to convince them, because he didn't test positive for anything.
Right.
So we left that hospital. We went home. We were home for 24 hours, and I was back again, and I took him to the hospital where my orthopedic surgeon works out of, because, I mean, not that I knew anybody in the ER, but it's like I had spent time in that hospital
Right.
from my knee replacement, so I'm like, okay, we're going there.
Yeah.
We went there. They did some interviews and some checks, and they're like, okay, yeah, no, let's get a CT scan. Let's get this, let's get that. And they started testing. We spent a week in the hospital. I couldn't leave. Okay. He went from thinking I was the most detestable creature on the planet to and he kept saying, you're my security blanket. I need you here. I need you here. If I stepped into the restroom in his little hospital room and didn't leave the door cracked,
Mm.
he would be pacing around going, where'd you go? Where are you? Poking his head out the door, going, where's my wife? Where's my wife? And so I had to give up all uh, modesty, and
Yeah.
with the bathroom door open, because he couldn't be without me right there.
Mhm. It's
They
almost
did
like
it.
he was afraid, like he had realized
Yes,
maybe at the
he
same
had.
time that
Well, he'd
something was
never been sick in his life. I mean, the man had never. Like I said, known him 40 years. Known him since he was 14. Never been in the hospital. You
wow.
know, uh, regular doctor's visits were few and far between. He was just never sick.
Yeah.
And so they turned us loose on Christmas Day last year.
Wow.
And I'm like, we have no answers. They had pumped him full of, he'd been on an IV drip for a week. So he's very well hydrated. I mean, but
Yeah.
I don't think, that wasn't the problem. We are about a half a mile from our house, maybe.
Hmm.
The phone rings, and it's the neurologist. And he said, where did you go? And I said, they sent us home. And he said, I went up to your room. You weren't there. Why did you leave? And I said, no, we didn't. They told us to leave. And he said, no, you get him back here immediately.
Wow.
And I said, well, okay, Dr. Kernrani, I will have him back shortly. But I said, I'm gonna go wash my hair with conditioner.
Yeah,
So we went home. Um, I gave the kids, my youngest son and a friend of his from the Marines were staying at the house, because I have a farm. So, I can't just disappear for 2 weeks.
right.
The horses don't understand not getting fed.
Yeah,
So I had they're staying there. I gave them some directions, some things to do. This is Christmas Day, and all I'm doing is telling them, make sure they feed this, make sure they clean this out. Don't forget to turn the lights on for the hens if it gets cold. And I'm just giving them a list of things to do on Christmas Day. We both grab showers. We grab a couple of changes of clothes, some clean undies, because I was doing the camping sink washing thing at the hospital because we didn't know we were going to be there for a week.
yeah.
And I grab my iPad, and he gets his laptop, and he goes to put his laptop in its case, and he stops and he looks at me and he says, "I bought this laptop for the trip to Alaska to take care of your mother's ashes." And this was September. Just, we're in December now. It was in September. And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Why didn't I go to Alaska with you?" And I said, "Well, honey, I don't know. That's what we've wanted to know all along, why you changed your mind, because that had changed up our hotel plans, our flight plans, because he backed out of that just out a week before we were supposed to leave, and we'd spent a year planning this trip.
Oh, wow.
And so my sons and I did the trip ourselves and had to completely change up our itinerary. We wound up renting an RV because we couldn't get replacement hotels in some of these places at such a late date and whatnot. And then we didn't. So it totally upended the Alaska plans to take care of mother's ashes. But but he couldn't remember why he didn't go.
Mhm.
And I didn't know why he didn't go. It's one of the things we'd had an actual big fight over, you
Sure.
know, and
I mean, that was an important moment. We've discussed this a little bit before, and we'll get
right.
into this about your mom, but
Yeah.
this was a significant kind of
Yes.
meaningful sojourn, and you would expect that your husband would be there, and then for reasons he
Well,
now can't remember, he pulled out.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was no surprise that her ashes were going to Alaska because ever since we moved here in 1984, you know, everybody she knew or met, she made sure to tell them, "Now, when I go, take my ashes back to the cabin in Alaska. I want them with my." She had a military police German Shepherd,
Mhm.
and the dog's ashes were in the lake by our old cabin,
Mhm.
right? So that was, she wanted to be with her dog.
Wow. Yeah.
But so it goes on and on, and we get back up to the hospital, and oh, it turns into just crazy because he's talking out of his
Mhm.
ear by now. I mean, I don't know. The words are just flying all over the place. He can't find the proper words for things. At one point, he told one of the nurses he had TB.
Oh,
So
wow.
then they tried to quarantine us, and that set us back like an hour and a half getting a room. And I'm trying to catch someone and tell them, no, no, don't listen to anything he says. Okay.
Yeah.
He doesn't, because by now he is in a delirium.
Yeah.
Uh, and he doesn't know reality from not reality. He's
And he doesn't
telling,
know it, and he presents
and
as
he
being
doesn't know it. He
healthy.
doesn't know it. He's
Yeah.
telling dirty jokes
Oh,
to
no.
the nurses. Okay, he's not that kind of person. He's a
Yeah.
very professional, shy person, and so it's, I mean, everything about this whole thing, I'm like, I he's acting like he's like 14, except I knew him when he was 14, 15 years old. He didn't even act this immature then.
Yeah.
And I'm just like running my fingers through my hair and I'm telling them, "You've got to talk to me. You can't, because I don't know what's going on." My heart is sitting in my throat because I'm thinking, if he's having a stroke, if he has, because somebody brought up Lewy body dementia, okay, Bruce
Yeah.
Willis and
Mhm.
Robin Williams, okay,
Mhm.
and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, and I'm going into these places mentally where I just don't know what to do, And
At this
he
point,
is
you
like,
have no indication. The neurologist has called you back to the hospital, but at
he's
this
called.
point,
We're still in the ER now. All they told us is check in through the ER. They knew we were coming, and they would have a room. It wouldn't be like a 6-hour wait like it was the first time we went
mhm,
to even get seen, kind of thing,
mhm.
because he wasn't bleeding. You know
Yeah,
what I mean. So you sit in the ER waiting room forever. But we're going, and I'm like, this is crazy. This isn't real life.
mhm.
But my heart is sitting, like up here in my throat, because I'm like, oh my God, what is wrong with him? A,
Yeah,
a severed limb is understandable.
yeah.
Some kind of mental break, because we didn't know. And
Mm-mm.
and he was so much worse this second time than he was the first time. The first time, once they ruled out stroke, I was like, okay, well, just the brief time period at home showed me just how out of it he was, because in the controlled environment of the hospital, we kind of kept the room dark, kept the shades pulled. There was a nurse in there every hour or two or whatever, but it was just kind of quiet. And we get home, and it's chaotic, and we have dachshunds who are yip yip yip, mommy daddy, we missed you, and the kids, I'm trying to give them the instructions, and he is on the verge of just mentally imploding. He can't handle all that stimuli.
Yeah.
And I get him back up to the hospital. We're in the room waiting to go upstairs, and he's saying things to the nurses that I'm just like, oh my God.
Yeah.
So we finally get upstairs, and then the doctor comes up, and he's got IV. And they started him that night, Christmas night. They started him on 1,000 milligram steroid infusion
Mm.
daily for a week.
Okay.
He had West Nile in his brain.
Wow.
And the bad part is they have no idea how long he had it. So the other thing is, they're telling me they won't know the extent of the damage for, after treatment for another 12 weeks or so.
Oh,
And
wow.
they said, however much his body manages to heal, his brain manages to heal in the next 12 weeks, pretty much all the improvement you're going to get, because it
Wow.
the brain has some kind of, neurology talk. But what I'm
Yeah.
hearing is he's never actually going to go back to normal.
Wow.
So I spend a week in the hospital with him. Like I said, he's still not letting me go away.
Yeah.
um,
So
then
you
he
don't really
started
have an
in.
opportunity to process this
No, I
information.
had no, absolutely nothing, And then as he finished his insanely huge, just for um, reference, what one of the nurses told me, normally people, when you're like say a Z-Pack or
Yeah.
prednisone,
Yeah.
the maximum is like 49 milligrams a day,
Wow.
and you taper that, right? He's doing
Yeah.
1,000 milligrams a day for a week.
Wow.
So, and then he went into this thing called steroid psychosis,
Wow.
and he quit sleeping. He wasn't sleeping much to begin with. Well, he literally spent 5 days wide awake
Wow.
and buzzing around the house. This is after we got home, buzzing around the house, and he's going to, he's like cleaning out one of the rooms, and he's going to this and that and remodel. And I mean, it was just, and then he, then he got on Amazon. Oh my gosh, I didn't realize he was.
Oh
So,
no.
oh yeah, we have packages daily, and I'm like, why do we need a giant stainless steel table? Because he ordered one. I don't know why I ordered that, but we need that.
Wow.
You know, and so I'm trying to figure out what's going on. All right. Another thing I forgot to bring up, when we were home on that Christmas day, he also is going through, and he opens his wallet, and he's like, "Why do I have $1,000 in my wallet?" I'm like, "I don't know. Why do you have $1,000 in your wallet? And give it to me." Then he goes, and he's getting the underwear and socks out, and he pulls out like $200 more out of his like underwear and sock drawer. And he goes, "Well, where did this come from?" And I'm like, "I don't know." So after we get to the hospital, once he's back with the doctors, and I'm alone for this brief minute. I called my oldest son and I said, "You go through my room top to bottom." And I said, "Look everywhere." I said, "So far we've got like $1,200, $1,300 that he doesn't even know he had stashed, that he had stashed." Okay, my son calls me back the next day, and I told him, I said, "Just fold it up and put it in the top shelf of the safe."
Yeah.
So $3,600 total he found rat holed around the house, behind pictures in the frames,
Yeah.
um,
Oh.
in the drawers, stuck behind anywhere and everywhere. And my oldest son was like, "Oh my gosh, Mom, you're so lucky I have a good job right now."
Oh, no.
Like,
Wow. So, I mean,
I,
this had been going on for a while,
this
and
had been going on for a while because it was a 20 here, a 50 there,
yeah.
and I'm just like, oh, I would love to just, randomly stumble on having that much money hidden in my house. But
But it's a signifier.
so,
This is showing you how sick he is and how sick he's
yes.
potentially been for a while.
Well, and he paranoid, insanely paranoid,
Interesting.
over, um, I couldn't talk to, if it wasn't somebody like in the family or somebody we'd known for years.
Yeah.
He was just like, "Why are you talking to them?" I'm like, "Well, he's my intern. I have to tell him what we need, to
Wow.
do this, to cover this, to do that."
Yeah.
And he's like, "Well, I don't like that kid. You know how college boys are." And I'm like, "Yeah, believe me.
This
This,
is not the
this,
man. This is not the
this,
man
this
that you had married who
no,
he never
not at all. I
treated you
mean,
this way. So,
we've
Jerica,
always,
how is it now? Is he still what is it? Walk us through kind of your day to day now because they gave you the 12-week window
and
and
that
they
was
said you
almost a year ago now. Yeah.
likely improve beyond that.
Mhm.
Tell us about tell us about the
Well,
current state of things and how does that contrast to what it was before and what does
well,
this
come to
feel like
find
for
out, the West Nile was more of a symptom,
you?
possibly. We actually, it's a chicken and an egg situation. We don't know. He has an autoimmune condition, called lupus. Okay,
Okay.
we only found that out a couple of months ago when he, got really sick this summer in the
Okay.
heat. He has a bone marrow mutation that, because of the amount they found in his blood work, and they did a bone biopsy as well, he has like an almost guaranteed 5-year window when he's going to develop a blood cancer. They can't do any treatment for that until they know which one he has.
Mm,
So he has to, he has monthly blood draws
yeah.
to check his numbers. He has dermatology appointments. He has oncology appointments because he already has an oncologist because they know this is coming.
Wow.
So, every 2 to 3 months we're at the oncologist. Every other month we're at the dermatologist because the lupus is cutaneous lupus and it causes him all kinds of skin,
Okay.
issues. And uh, he can't regulate his body temperature anymore.
Okay.
And he'll either get, but it doesn't necessarily match the conditions. Like he'll get outrageously hot when it's cold, or he'll get outrageously cold when it's cold. He's all over the place. He will have literally hourly temperature swings from
Yeah.
cold sweats to burning up to shivering, like someone who has the flu, except it doesn't go away.
Wow.
You know,
And does he
I
still
have
present personality-wise, does he present differently in that way, or do you see more the man you know now in terms of like the paranoia and the
the
mistreatment?
paranoia is gone. He's actually almost naively trusting of people now. So I'm like, I don't know, which I would like to see the happy middle back again because he's almost childlike sometimes. I'll
Mhm.
get glimpses of what I consider the real him every now and then, and
Mhm.
he's firing all cylinders is what I call it, and
Yeah.
he's himself. And then he turns around and he will say, or he will do something, and I'm like, oh Lord,
Okay.
and I'm like, it's those false hopes, even though logically I know, because I deal with his doctors, I know they told me today is the best he's going to be.
Ever.
And ever, so there will be something that dwindles tomorrow, and you got to hang on to what happened that was good today. And they said treat it just like a dementia patient, just like a dementia diagnosis. But yeah, I mean, he when all this started, he was 53 years old.
Wow.
And I have a friend, and she recently lost her father that she was caretaker for, and he died of dementia over here in the veterans home. And he was 94.
Right. Yeah.
He was 40 years older, so it's not. It's very sad. Don't get me wrong, and I know it affected her, but it's not the same as seeing like sometimes he gets so outrageous with his dirty jokes or practical jokes or pranks and things that my kids are getting disgusted. Okay, my
Wow.
kids are the kids are 34, 30, 29, and 25. Okay,
Yeah.
Th- these young men should all be in, oh
Yeah.
ha ha. They're like, oh my God, is he gonna stop acting like that?
Yeah.
How can you deal with this, mother? And I'm like, it's what he is now.
Yeah.
And I said, we have to learn the new normal, which actually changes kind of day by day. I get up in the morning, um, and we give it 15 or 20 minutes talking to him and whatnot, and whether he wakes up first or I wake up first. Actually, he wakes up first most of the time now. He's waking up at like 5 o'clock in the morning. I
Mm.
can't do that. I am not in the army anymore. I do not get up at 5 a.m. Okay. Um, but he goes and, but he doesn't leave the house or anything. He just, but I'll get up and we do breakfast. We sit, we talk a little bit. I get a feel for who he is.
Yeah.
And if
Wow.
he's,
Because
if
it changes
he's
day by day by
day
day.
by day, and it goes back and forth. It's kind of a pendulum too, and we have good days and we have bad days, and then we have just blah days, and so I give it 15 or 20 minutes talking to him and this and that to find out whether I can go to any appointments I have that day, whether I can go hang out with my friend who wants to go Christmas shopping, or whatever. And I guess I had I told you this beforehand. We had a Friendsgiving a couple of weeks ago, um, the week before the holiday, and a bunch of us from the high school swim team all got together.
Yeah.
And we had, I mean, and some of these people traveled states and states to get here, but
Yeah.
we all got together. Well, one of the people there who is a friend, who's been a friend since, we were kids, she came up. And for a brief time after I had graduated high school and gone to college, but he was still in high school, they had dated for a couple of months, but they had known each other for a couple of years.
Yeah.
And I had talked to her while we were all on a girls' trip to, I'm trying to think, Hot Springs.
Okay.
We got to Hot Springs on a girls' trip, and there were 7 of us, and we were all, high school friends. And I talked to her a little bit about the situation and this and that. And then
Yeah.
we had all had a dinner. We try to get together about once a month and have these dinners,
Nice. Yeah.
and
It's good
compare
you
notes
have
on
that
our,
with all this.
right, to compare notes on, because we've known each other for 40 years. It's the only people you can talk to about your kids, your dogs, your husbands.
Yeah.
And we had talked briefly about a power of attorney.
Hmm.
And after I got home that evening, I got a text from her because he had gone with me to the dinner, and there was some of the guys from the guys team, some of the girls from the girls team, and we're all there. Some of them had their kids, one of them had her grandkid,
Yeah.
and we're all talking. And so anyway, she sends me this text and she says, "You need to check your email." She said, "I've got everything written up. All you have to do is fill it out and sign it for your power of attorney." Because she said, "I really think you need it." And
Wow.
I'm like, okay, that is very sad to me, but it's also very validating to me that he's not functioning normally, you
Right.
know, because here's someone who's known him for many, many years, and she
Mhm.
sees it too,
Yeah.
that his behavior is just off. It's not
Yeah.
inappropriate, not, but it's just he's not. A lot of times he has this kind of glazed look in his eyes,
Mm.
like he just either isn't comprehending or isn't processing.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
our oldest is autistic. He's
Mhm.
high functioning,
Mm.
okay, but he has from when he was in school, he was in special classes, and so he's got some of his friends and stuff. So and they're still friends. It's he's
Aw,
34 and he still has a lot of the same friends. But I
I
get around some of them even now, and it's like I can see that same kind of, just like, they mentally check out because it's not what, it doesn't hold their attention, or they don't understand it, or whatever the trigger is, I do not know. But
mm,
now he does that too. That just kind
sure.
of, and
Yeah.
you're just going, "Hey, ooh." Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
And
Prior to this dinner, did you feel
mhm,
like did the people around you comprehend the scale of what was
I don't
happening
think
in the
so.
house?
I don't think so, because most of the time, I stay in contact with them, and we do Christmas shopping, do a summer holiday something, because of with his lupus and his immune system problem with the white blood cell. His white blood cell count is just almost nothing now,
Mm,
and so I have to be very careful about taking him around people,
yeah.
you know and I've become almost a hermit about letting people come to our house. I'm just like, "No, you have, no, I think you sniffled, you need
Yeah.
to go away," you know
Yeah.
because I have dealt with him now over the course of the past year. He's been sick like 3 times and even had COVID in July, and he doesn't get over,
Yeah.
things that the
Can't fight
rest
it
of us
off.
are like, yeah, there's no such thing as a 24-hour bug when you have a compromised immune system.
Right.
you know and so I have to be very, very careful. And his doctors told me, because he even had severely problematic reaction to a vaccine back in January. And and they were like, "Well, people with compromised immune systems, we need to have," but he can't even handle, like, the weakened or killed viruses.
Yeah.
So I have to keep all my vaccines up according to his doctor,
Right.
because he can't even take, like, a flu shot or anything.
Wow.
And so I'm like, "Oh, this is all just getting better and better."
Yeah.
So
Wow.
I get to play pincushion to keep him from getting ill, but and that was the first thing I'm asking everybody: who's going to be there? Is everybody feeling okay? Is that, where are we going? And another friend of ours who lives not terribly far, she's like, "Well, this is the restaurants. I know the owners. I go here. We've been going here for years after church every Sunday, so it'll be good, and all da 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 da." I said, "Okay, and so we all met up, and everybody, I mean, and I'm like, I don't know. I'm more on alert than I was, like, when I was in the military or law enforcement. I'm like, is that a sniffle? Is that a sneeze? Did somebody,
Sure.
I'm up here somewhere.
Yeah.
And but yeah, after we left, I got a couple of calls from a couple of the girls, and one of the guys, that he came from 2 states away,
Yeah.
and him and his twin sister went to school, lifetime friends,
Yeah.
and he came out to the house and spent part of the day over there.
Nice.
The a couple of days later before he headed back out east. But
Yeah. So this was a situation, and this was pretty recently that you all gathered, and this was a chance
a couple of weeks ago, yeah.
your friends to really take this in and process what you've been dealing with for this last year. I'm curious, Jerica, if there's something that you would want people to understand about this kind of grief, because it's very much the grief. It's very much a loss of a person, but it's not in that way that would maybe be understood. It's kind of under the radar a little bit. And I'm curious what you would want people to understand. And if there's some way that would feel supportive for people to show up, what should people say? How could people be there for you in the midst of this?
Well, one of the big things is people are like, well, he looked okay to me,
Mhm.
Well, yeah, because this is a very specific, there are very, very specific conditions before I allow him out, and I'm not saying allow him out. He goes to barber on his own. He goes, he'll go and run and pick up some, Taco Bell, Mickey D's, whatever. I mean, he's not an invalid by any means. Okay.
Right.
But controlling who he's around because of the threat level, because yeah, okay, you only see him when he's well and doing well. I
Mhm.
see him every day,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
there's a lot of times you don't see him because either A, he's just too sick to go anywhere, and he knows it, or B, I have assessed his mental functionality and I don't want him around anybody right now. And
Oh, I lost sound with you there for a minute. Are you muted? Let's see. I wonder, Jerica, do you want to try?
okay, did that come back?
You're back. You're
Yeah.
back.
All right.
Okay,
I,
good.
the,
Good.
the truck just disconnected from the phone and said, see
That's
ya.
okay. That's
But
okay.
anyway,
Just take us back where you were because we didn't hear the beginning. Yeah.
okay. So, but the thing is that I see him every day, and sometimes, I'll just make a mental assessment, and if like for whatever reason, scheduling or whatever, if one of the boys can't like physically come stay at the house,
Yeah.
um one works nights. Everybody's got some pretty different work schedules, and I'll be like, hey, why don't you get online and send him an evite and you guys play today?
Yeah.
You know, keep him occupied so that
Yeah.
he isn't gonna wander off.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
He's not working. He can't work anymore.
no, he cannot work anymore, which that is a whole nother. I had to medically retire um 2 years ago. It was, I mean, just right before my mother passed away. I
Wow.
had to medically retire because I had a knee replacement that failed, and
Mhm.
I had three um, surgeries to try to repair that. Then they corrective, and then they went in and they said, oh, well, it's a metal allergy and you've got a composite alloy in your knee. So then 2020, I had the first knee replacement. 2022, I had the second knee replacement where they took all the components out and put medical stainless in. And I spent 15 months in physical therapy, learning how to walk again without a cane or most people, it's 6 weeks and they're back to work, right?
Yeah.
I was spending more time in recovery or at doctor's visits than I was at work. And physical therapy was like never ending, twice a week for 15 months. Okay.
Wow.
I'm very grateful for the people I worked with. I'm very grateful for their support. But when it came time to renew my contract, I just couldn't do it with a clear conscience because I didn't know where
Yeah.
these continued surgeries were going,
Sure.
and now I have to have every 6 months, I have to have nerve ablations, radio frequency ablations of my knee and my back to still continue to be able to walk.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to go trekking across here and you're not going to notice anything's wrong
Yeah.
because I only had my shots a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
as they wear off, I carry a cane with me.
Sure.
And so I'm coming off of some major health problems. Um, when my mother died, I'm in the midst of. I mean, I had the knee replacement December 15th, I believe it was, and she died March 6th.
Wow.
So,
Which
and
was a
like I said,
completely unexpected event. So you got pummeled.
yes,
You had
I,
you
you
had
know,
your health situation, which should have
mhm,
been pretty routine and went off
mhm,
the rails.
yeah,
And then not even what, 4 months later.
right. Well, and I'm also dealing with, I gave up a career. I mean, extensive education to have the job I had. And
Yeah.
it really pretty specialized on top of that.
Wow.
And I had to just walk away from it.
Mm.
I mean, if there was any blessing in that whole thing, it's the fact that the entire injury to my legs is the result of the military and having been one of those people who was jumping out of the perfectly good aircraft instead of staying in them.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's like there's a rule. If you've got wings on your chest, you just sold your knees to the government, right? So, I do get a lifelong pension for that, but
Sure.
to go from a career outright of my own
Yeah.
to living on a military medical pension, and then my husband, a year or two later, he's not making, and it's just like, oh my gosh, this is
Wow.
crazy.
Yeah.
I'm learning how to live like I haven't lived for
Yeah.
a long time.
Wow. And your outlook is so buoyant, and yours is an interesting state of grief because it's continuing on, right? You're still in the losing process, as it were. This is not complete. It's not like this loss has concluded and now you're trying to navigate it. The loss is still on the build, right? You're
Right.
still watching as pieces of your life
Mhm.
are breaking off and falling away and becoming
That's a
irreversibly gone.
good analogy. It's like I'm at Antarctica and little chips in pieces, and sometimes they're big as a state, and sometimes they're the size of a thimble. But
Yeah.
the thing is it's chip, 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 chip. And I have a great support system through the VA. We have uh, 2 days a week, which you don't have to go to both of them or you don't have to go to any of them, but they do offer grief group counseling for, and we all come in there with radically different types of
Yeah.
grief. And my grief with my mother doesn't always jive with what goes on.
Sure.
Yeah,
You had a
a
complex relationship with your mother.
very complex relationship. Love her dearly, still
Yeah.
love. But I did the best I could to raise her. I don't know how else to put it.
Yeah.
She was
Yeah.
very complicated, and she was extremely immature,
Mm.
very wise and very knowledgeable and very, very well learned. She gave me my passion for education.
Wow.
As a matter of fact, one time my husband told me, he said, I almost wish you had a heroin habit. It would be cheaper than all these college classes you were always.
Wow.
I said, "Well, honey, I'm not, I'm trying to wallpaper the back room. 'Cause, you know,
And so she imparted that love of education,
yes.
to
Hmm.
you.
Hmm.
But,
My
was
grand,
she a highly educated woman as well?
Mhm.
Was she also a highly educated woman?
Yes and no.
Yeah.
She went to real estate school.
Okay.
She went to nursing school. She went to college for drafting. She went to college for psychology. She never finished a single degree.
Wow.
I think she had like a fear of success type thing. She
Mm.
would get right to the finish line and drop out like that last semester or not go and take that final exam. I mean, it was right to the finish line
Oh, wow.
and pulling down, Dean's honor roll constantly. And then, so she had this amazing skill set
Mm.
with none of the documentation because the very end, she would just, you know,
How about you? Did you learn from that lesson, and you've seen yours through to completion? You currently hold how many degrees?
I have 2 bachelor's degrees and a master's.
Yeah.
It took me 16 years to get my first bachelor's. I mean, I went off and I started school straight out of high school. Went and then some. Okay, we had a situation involving my mother. Oh my gosh, there's a surprise. Anyway, and so I quit um, when I was just, I don't know, around 24 hours. So finished my freshman year
Yeah.
and uh, dropped down and was going to the community college in town. Um, then got a job for the sheriff's department and worked in the jail for a couple of years, and then went off and met somebody and started a family. And then he and I both went back to school for a while, and then we didn't stick together. and and
Yeah.
it just goes, on and on and on. Then I joined the military because, what do you do when you're trying to support a kid by yourself? Oh, go
Yeah.
in the army. That's, so, and I went, and then I completed my degree. And when the first time I finally walked across that stage, and it was like, okay. So I loved it,
Yeah.
and I would take a course here and there, but then I went into the soul sucking work of child welfare. I
Mm.
I love it. It was passion, but
Yeah.
it you want to talk about grief.
Oof.
So I had my third case with a child death on it, and I said, I'm done, And then I walk out of there, and I'm going, I have all this education, and now I have nowhere to use it because
Yeah.
I away from that, and I have no desire to deal with anyone else's problems. I can't do this. So that was an interesting grieving process.
Yeah.
Then, of all things, Goodwill was offering some computer classes for free. And
Mm.
my mom was getting enrolled in these computer classes
Mhm.
down there with her. And they also had resume writing classes. And it was just, they had a lot of uh, uh, rehabilitation. They had partnered with a couple of rehabs. They had partnered with a couple of reintegration programs.
Yeah.
You had a wide variety of people, and then you had people like me who had just left one entire career field, or you had housewives trying to get back into the working force.
Yeah.
And so it was really neat. I mean, the Goodwills, the the works program was really good um, to help my confidence.
Yeah.
And nobody wanted to tell me their problems, and I didn't have to worry about, if they were fed, right? So
Yeah.
working through that, okay, well, here's the kicker about that. Really excited. My mother found this program. We went down together to join this program. And the day before we were supposed to start, everybody had to do a UI. This is no big deal, right? But it was because they did have the reintegration program for the for the ex-cons, right?
Sure.
My mother didn't pass the UI.
Oh, no.
And I'm sitting there, and as the counselor lady who had been so sweet this whole time, calls us in, and she's like, yeah, and I'm going, and all I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? And I did not say freaking. Okay, but I'm just like, are
Wow.
real? And she said, well, I haven't smoked a joint in over a month, and it's like, yeah, but it stays in your adipose tissue, and you are a 65-year-old chubby lady, I mean, where you are in life. There's a lot of adipose tissue there for it to hang out in. And I'm just going, so I went ahead and stayed in the program. Went through the whole program, all these different classes. Hey, if they offered a free, I got my forklift license. Okay.
Nice.
It's education and it was free. I
Yeah.
was all over that. And
Yeah.
I kept trying to get her to come back. I'm like, look, don't do anything for another month. And that's the same thing the counselor lady said, and then come back in a month. And she wouldn't do it. And I'm like, it's really fun. Everybody here's really nice. You get to meet a whole cross section of people,
Yeah.
every demographic, and she was like, no, I'm too embarrassed to come back. I said, don't worry about it. I said, we've got a guy right now in our class that he was, he had the same thing happen.
Yeah.
And it's just that's just part of what you're here to learn is, but she didn't work at the same place for like 20 some odd years.
Yeah.
But she was just forever the hippie chick.
Yeah.
She never grew out of that. She was, the 60s and 70s, and she spent so much energy fighting the man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That if you just,
Yeah.
just do it. It's not a big deal.
And then when you lose someone that you have that kind of complex relationship where there's been a lifetime
Mm-hmm.
of mounting frustration and disappointment because she's somebody who clearly exhibits such potential, but
Yeah.
you're saying would kind of throw in the towel one way or another at the last moment over and over again. And even her death ultimately, as you told it to me, was another one of those decisions, just poor decision making.
Poor decision making. It was absolutely. She had called me the night before, and I was out of town with the boys, one of my sons, and then a friend of his, and we were over at his friend's dad's house getting a motorcycle worked on.
Mm-hmm.
I have a truck, so when something needs to be moved, I'm everybody's friend.
Yeah.
So anyway, so I'm out, and I'm getting real spotty reception.
Yeah.
So excited. I can just hear the excitement in her voice. And she had gone down. She used to ride a Honda Shadow 750 motorcycle. And
Okay.
she was thing everywhere. She, like I said, she was kind of a not a roughneck biker chick, but she was definitely a biker chick. And
Yeah.
my grandfather was a motorcycle and stock car racer. So she
Okay.
came by. So she had bought a scooter, a little, I don't know what CC, but a street legal scooter.
Okay.
She could go from her house to work, and it was like 5 miles on the same street in town, just motoring through the city on her little scooter.
How old is she at this point?
71.
Okay. And she got a scooter.
This is the night before the fire.
Wow.
This is the night before the fire. And I'm like, okay, you're going to wear a helmet. We're not spending the kind of money we spent on the helmet for the motorcycle for you to leave it in the box.
Yeah.
You're going to wear a helmet. A do-rag doesn't work. Oh, no, on that little scooter, I'm going to have a helmet on because, I'm like, you better. I said, I'm not buying you another helmet. There's a whole group of us that pitched in and got her this super duper helmet. Years motorcycle.
Yeah. Yeah.
She wore like twice, She just, I don't feel the wind in my hair. And I'm like,
Yeah.
you need to have safety. Yeah. So, we have this discussion, but the phone kept cutting in and out because I was out in the country. And I was like, well, I'm going to have to call you tomorrow or something.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to hear the whole story. And she said, well, they're not open on Monday, so we'll have to go on Tuesday and pick it up. I'm like, okay, fine, whatever. So the next day, which was Sunday, I'm out there and I have a little koi pond in the backyard, and it was March, but it was a warm day. And, I'm out there cleaning, and it's mucky. I mean, it spent the winter out there. So I'm knee deep in the fish poo, because I'm out there wading around in it and cleaning stuff, and I'm hosing down filters and cleaning out lines and just getting a pre-summer kind of checkup on everything. And my phone buzzes a couple of times, I look down at it. I'm like, I have no recollection who this number is.
Yeah.
So I'm like, and I just clip it back on, and I go back to what I'm doing. And then I'm sitting and and the more I work and the more I'm thinking, I have a bad feeling. I have a bad feeling. And it's just gnawing at me and gnawing at me. So finally I reach a stopping point, and where I can actually either stop or have somebody else finish it up. But
Yeah.
and I'm like, so it buzzes again, and I'm like, who is it? And so I look at it, and it says, "Mom's fire, gone to hospital," or and I'm like, what?
Oh, wow.
So, or hosp, and I'm going, I don't even know what this is. I don't know this number, so I go out and I finish and I put everything together on the pond. And then as I'm walking up into the house, I go ahead and for whatever reason, I call the number back.
Yeah.
It's my mother's next door neighbor. It's the elderly man who lives next door. And he's like, your mom's house is on fire, and they just took off in the ambulance and they're taking her to the hospital. And I'm like, oh, so I run in the house, and my oldest son was there, and I jump in the truck and he jumps in with me, because I said, if they took her to the hospital, I said, you're going to need to drive her truck, and get her vehicle so that she can come home or whatever. Because my mind's not thinking.
No.
And I will tell you this, an old Nissan Titan will peg off it'll do every bit of that 130 says on the thing.
Because you were racing there. Wow.
I'm surprised they didn't blow up that old truck.
Yeah.
And I get there and I pull up, and the fire's down. It's just some smoldering stuff going on. The firemen are walking around and hitting the last few spots, and this 2 firemen walk up to me, because I'm like literally doing the sliding stop. And as we were driving, my son's going, mom. I said, I know how to drive like this. And he said, Mom, you're not at work. Don't drive like this. Don't drive like this.
Wow.
But I have all the training from back in the day. I still remember how to drive like this.
Yeah.
Said, no. So we get there. The first thing I say when I get out, one of the firemen comes up and says, hurry. I said, I'm her daughter. And she goes, okay. And the first thing out of my mouth, the first words out of my mouth were, oh my God, this is a hoarder house. Are your guys okay?
Yeah.
And they said, well, we figured it out pretty quick that it's a hoarder house, and we're all okay. And I said, okay, I don't want anybody to fall through get trapped in the stuff. Right.
Yeah.
She kept everything.
At this point, you're thinking that she's been taken in as a precaution. You're not thinking that
right.
She's been injured, let alone killed.
Right. Then David, the next door neighbor, is, and like I said, he's in the late 70s, maybe 80, and him and his wife are telling me that she was laying on the front lawn nude because her clothes had burned off of her, but she just looked like she had a sunburn. She was just kind of pink all over, but her clothes were gone. And I'm like, yeah. And this is how your mind doesn't work, right? All I was thinking is she was always buying all that cheap junk from Temu. And I figured she loved muumuus. She had reached that age where she loved those little muumuu dresses. And I figured, oh, she got one of those cheap dresses from Temu that she probably paid $1.50 for. That's made out of tissue paper, and not fire resistant, and it went up. This is because my mind's not wrapped around
what's happened.
Happened. And the fireman goes, is there anything you need to do or get or anything, And I said, well, I figured since she hadn't called me, she must not have her phone. So I said, I need to go get her phone. And they said, well, do you know what it would be? I said, yeah, it would be like right there next to her bed, whatever her bedside table is. Now, mind you, I hadn't been in this house in 10 years because she wouldn't let me in. Whole story that goes along with that. I put her on hoarders. They came out and took care of the house. It was amazing. She did great for 3 years. I feel like I got 14 more years out of having her, that
Yeah.
this postponed by 14 years by the
Because
A&E,
there'd been an intervention. Wow.
because they did intervention and came out and cleaned up once, you know. Anyway, so we go, and this fireman holds my hand. Okay, now mind you, I'm still dealing with really bad knee problems because
Mhm.
just a couple of months before had this knee replacement replaced. You know,
Mhm.
still in physical therapy. They take me through there. This fireman, fire chief has me on one side, and the or fire captain has me on one side, and the fireman has me on the other side, and they're walking me through there. And I'm like having a terrible time walking through because it's just wet and squashy and it's piles of clothes and this and that. And I
Yeah.
put my hand on one of the door frames and it's still hot. I had to take my hand off of it because I said, "Hey, that's still like char hot." I said, "It burned my hand." And they were like, "Oh, you know," so they came and hit that. And and the fireman hands me the phone. You know, we poke our head in her bedroom. It's right there on the little bedside table thing.
Yeah.
He hands me the phone. They escort me back out. Squish, 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 squish. There's an important thing to the squish, squish. Okay,
Yeah.
into play later. Squish, 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 squish. Back through the burnt house. Okay,
Yeah.
we get out there. I type in the code to her truck on the side of her truck. Right. My son gets in the truck, gets the spare keys out of the little hidey hole center console thing where I knew she kept her spare keys. Um, the side of the truck, the plastic components, it was a '03 F-150, and the little plastic rim just kind of got sad on the driver's side and around the rear view mirror. It just kind of
Mhm.
it just drooped. It didn't burn, but it just kind of like drooped.
Wow.
And the house, the truck was sitting maybe, I don't know, 15 feet from the house.
Okay.
That hot a house fire gets, and you don't
Wow.
really.
Wow.
So we get to the hospital, but as I'm leaving, I'm like, what happened? And one of the firemen and the next door neighbor both said, well, she kept telling the paramedic the battery exploded. You know, she had one of those. I think we all have one in the corner of one room. We've got a power strip with the phone charger, the
Mhm.
tablet charger, all the different chargers plugged in. And that is where they determined the fire started. So it was something she had plugged into charge in the corner of the living room that had exploded. And you could tell when I finally got to see her, the extent of injuries on her right side emanating from her hand and everything. She had been grabbing a battery that exploded or something.
Wow.
So it was, but she was talking. Okay, so she told him the battery exploded, and she also told him that she went she got outside, but then her dog got scared. Her rat terrier got scared, and it ran back in the house through the doggy door at the back of the house. So she ran back in the house to get it. And that's how she died, was trying to get Miss Patty, the rat terrier.
Wow.
And I'm like, oh my God, only you would go and, destroy, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I'm also thinking, she's 71 years old. The neighbors saw all this happening. Somebody couldn't throw her down and sit on her. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, she wanted
Yeah.
her dog, but
Yeah.
she wasn't an Olympic athlete. Training her shouldn't have been a big a deal.
Yeah.
Um,
But that feeling of powerlessness and that feeling of grief, it mirrors what your experience of her had been throughout your life in many
my
ways. And have that.
my entire there was such this is so hard to say, but it's so true. There was such a sense of relief that it had finally happened, whatever it was, because there was always she had always put herself in these precarious situations.
Mm.
And it had always been my job to, or my grandparents while they were alive, but we bailed her out of predicaments that she got herself in that were all her own fault,
Yeah.
totally avoidable circumstances
Yeah.
that, okay, we spent
Mm.
5 years living on a homestead in Denali State Park in Alaska, 15 miles from the nearest place that had electric or running water.
Wow.
You know, the largest black bear at that time in the 80s that had been harvested was harvested less than a half a mile from our house.
Wow.
Record state black bear. Okay.
Yeah.
She's out there in the woods with 3 little kids.
Yeah. This
And
has been a lifetime building, this
I,
sense of
I,
frustration and
since I was 11 years old and we moved out to that cabin out of Anchorage into that cabin in the woods, right? I
yeah.
high alert when it came to my mom. I mean, just to the point, you know, because she got herself in sticky situations all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And um, and and I mean, on the one hand, I admire the fact she wasn't afraid. She
Yeah.
was not afraid, and I can only hope that I have half that spunk,
Yeah.
spontaneity,
Yeah. Yeah.
but you got to temper that with some common sense or self-preservation or something.
Yeah.
So anyway, I get to the hospital and I forget how to drive my truck. I get in the parking lot and I cannot function to park my vehicle. There was actually an orderly who was pushing someone in a wheelchair from building to building, and
Mhm.
I just got out and I stood on the rail of my truck and hollered at him over the top of the truck, and I'm like, I don't know what to do. I'm trying to get to the ER right there. I said, I don't know where to put the truck. I don't know what to do with the truck. My brain, like
Right.
something simple as parking my vehicle, couldn't
Yeah.
do. He was so sweet. He took the gentleman in the wheelchair into the next building. Don't know what he did with him, but he came out a few minutes later and he said, "You go in the ER. I'll bring you your keys." Because I
Wow.
said my mom was in a house fire and I've got.
Yeah.
He parked the truck for me. He brought me the keys. I'm there for a couple of minutes. I tell them who I'm there to see. They take me back into this little room. This is when I knew it was real, that something was real.
Mhm.
It's a little room. Now, I thought they were going to take me back to see her.
Mhm.
They take me back to this little room, and it has 2 chairs and a couch in it, and that's it.
Mhm.
And it's got one little window way high up, you know. And I'm like, oh my God, this is not, no, no. And then a nurse comes in and he talks to me for a bit, and he tells me that there's 100% chance that she won't survive 24 hours. Medical people don't say 100%. They don't give absolutes. Okay.
Right.
Surgeon from the burn unit comes down. Now, this was a nurse from the burn unit. And then he left in a few minutes, hour. I don't know. Time had no meaning at
Yeah.
all. It felt like forever and it felt like nothing.
Yeah.
Surgeon comes down from the burn unit and says, um, she has 100% chance of dying before the night is through.
Wow.
So I got a 0% chance of survival and I got a 100% chance of mortality, and this is what they gave me. And I called my dad. I didn't know what to do. Okay. And so I called daddy. Now daddy lives up in Washington, and my mother and my stepmother were good friends, because
Mm.
he met and married her years after they'd been divorced. So there was no animosity there, you know,
Yeah.
and I'm talking to my dad and my stepmom, and I'm like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. And daddy says, "Do you need me, baby?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "I'll be on a plane." And I said, "No, don't do that because I don't know what's going on." And he said, "I'm going to send your sister." So because my sister just lives a I don't know, hour away from him. She lives
Yeah.
in and my sister and my youngest son, because he was still living up there, they jump on a plane. My brother was in Albuquerque at the time, and he was going to just jump on his motorcycle and just run.
Yeah.
And his wife stopped him and made him get a plane ticket and made him fly in
Yeah.
because no, you just got off work, you're tired, you
Yeah.
don't do a 10-hour drive on top of that.
Yeah.
So, and a couple of our high school friends that we had dinner with a couple of weeks ago, they showed up
Yeah.
and they sat with me. And my husband came up, and he and I went and we walked with them before they had her bandaged,
Hmm.
but she was intubated in the ER. Once he got there, they let me go back there where
Mm.
she
Okay.
and her across to the burn unit, escorted by a deputy sheriff. I don't know if it's protocol with burn.
Mm.
I know there's a lot of complication because of a house fire that came into getting her death certificate, that came into getting her insurance.
Sure.
A very, they want to check every possibility that it's not arson, that it's not this or that.
Sure. Yeah.
Um, so, but yes, a deputy escorted her over to the burn unit, and then they had to stay out in the waiting room for about an hour while they debrided her and wrapped her and everything. And then this very nice burn unit nurse went into whole detail of what to expect, and at the time. So I sat with her. She lived 20 hours after after the paramedics picked her up. She lived another 20 hours. Um, I had already given him the okay to unplug her from everything once my brother and sister got there.
Yeah.
And my brother signed the papers because when he walked in, he saw her and he was like, "I can't do this." And he's a cop,
Yeah.
and he was like, "I can't do this." And he turned around and walked out. And so he went and did the paperwork, or finished up the paperwork, because I'd already told
Yeah.
him to turn up. Um, my youngest son and my sister had missed a connecting flight in Atlanta,
Oh no.
so they didn't make it before she had passed. You know,
Okay.
the funeral home had already picked her up by the time that they made it, because But I
Yeah.
said, my sister, my little sister, is a very sensitive soul. She's a therapist,
Hmm.
but she's a very different personality than my brother and I.
Sure.
Because my
Yeah.
brother, 2 days, we have 2 days apart. We're both very similar just because of our like zodiac, if you're into that thing.
Sure. Yeah.
6 years and 2 days.
Yeah. Wow. And I mean it's the traumatic death of a parent. It's gonna affect
Oh,
everybody differently.
absolutely.
Jerica, we're running out of daylight. I'm not gonna be able to see you much longer, but tell us, if you don't mind, I'd
Mhm.
like to kind of just finish on a note of a portrait of this grief. You've walked us through kind of this saga
Well,
of the end of her life. What is it like to be grieving her?
it is very different. Um, and oh, the shoes, real quick before I forget, the shoes came into play because that whole night I sat in the hospital in this super sterile room because it's the burn unit, right?
Sure.
Those shoes, those are brand new pair of Skechers.
Hmm.
All I could smell was the fire in her house if I moved my feet. I wound up having to take my shoes off and leave them on the other side of the room.
Wow.
Sister was at a bat mitzvah for a friend of hers in LA the Friday. This was Monday. On
Mm.
Friday, she had already been obligated to go to this bat mitzvah. Now, her friend is also best friends with Sarah Michelle Gellar, right?
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
it Her friend was one of the writers for Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Okay.
Okay, got a lot of Hollywood hot shots there.
Yeah.
Bat mitzvah, for people they called out who could not be in attendance, they mentioned my mother
Mhm.
because my sister had gone ahead and shown up. My sister didn't realize it. She had the shoes on she had worn when we went back over to the house later to find the dog's body, because I took the dog's body to my vet to have it cremated.
Okay.
My sister was walking around and she kept smelling the smell of the shoes. And she's like, I didn't even think about changing shoes.
Yeah.
So that even when I look at those shoes now, and I've been washed a jillion times, but I look at them, um, when we light a fire in the fireplace,
Yeah.
not the wood itself, but sometimes you throw like the junk mail in there or something to start the fire.
Sure.
certain things
Brings you right back. Yeah.
we smell, and all,
Wow.
all of us that were closely involved with the situation are just like, oh my God, I'm there.
Yeah.
I'm back. But yeah, we had to deal with the whole situation of the hoarding aspect of it. We had to deal with the situation of we found 42 pre-rolled medical marijuana joints still in the package. We we
No.
Aggies, and we found, both legal and questionable packaging for,
Okay.
and I'm like, oh my Lord, she never grew up.
Yeah.
You know, she was 17, had me, and I think she stayed right there.
Yeah. Yeah. That's hard. That's really hard. They say the research indicates that those most likely to struggle and to kind of slip into what's called complex grief are those who had a strained or estranged relationship from a parent, more so even than someone who's very, very close, because it's hard to process.
I'm gonna read something really quick, and I know you can't see me, but
Yeah.
this is my first entry in my grief journal
Yeah.
that I put together for my mother.
Yeah.
Okay. Started this when we were in Alaska, finally taking care of her ashes. And I wrote this on September 9th, which is my brother's birthday, of Chena Hot Springs, Alaska. Nothing in our lives is more complex and complicated than our relationship with our mothers. Maybe it's my own life experiences, or maybe it's all mothers and daughters. My mother was one of, if not the most complex person I have ever encountered. She was capable of being strong and amazing, overcoming trials no one of any normal fortitude could. Yet she was also weak willed and unable to overcome her deepest personal issues and addictions.
Wow.
And it's when you're mourning someone who had an addictive personality,
Yeah.
and people say marijuana is not that bad, but a lifetime of of that being your primary, I don't know. I get to this point and then I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, she was arrested for drug trafficking when I was 16,
Wow.
which is not normal, and yet she was a very disciplined ballet dancer. She taught, studied, and then taught tap, jazz, and ballet through junior high and high school, and for a couple of years afterwards, she was teaching. I mean, she
Mm.
had very disciplined habits, and she had hot mess habits.
Yeah.
And there are days when I miss her every day at some point.
Yeah.
So days when I'm like, I've I'm so relieved I don't have to worry about what shenanigans she's getting into now.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's that's my we can go into it a little deeper at some point if you want, but
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that little portrait of grief, and I feel like this probably warrants another episode. We need to come together again and just explore this realm of. I don't think you're alone in this. It's something I see a lot in families that I work with around grief.
Mhm.
Is the mother wound, the parent wound, but particularly grieving somebody who was disappointing in some kind of way, right? And the complexity.
And it's not necessarily their fault. I mean, she she was, I'm not even gonna lie, she was really spoiled
Yeah.
because she was an only child. She had polio. She wasn't expected to even live to adulthood.
Yeah.
So my grandparents, who were a non-conventional,
Yeah.
and had a career,
Yeah.
and my grandpa owned his own business.
Yeah.
You know, so she was. I mean, because she had working parents in the 50s. People didn't have that. People had stay-at-home parents.
Yeah.
And she was sickly, and I don't think she even attended an actual public school till she was like in second or third grade, because she had tutors in the hospital most
Oh,
in the
wow.
beginning. So,
Oh, yeah.
it,
We definitely need to
yeah,
unpack this in another session.
yeah,
But what a wonderfully complex person. And you're in
she,
this grief journey.
it's so, but with Buck being sick, there's so many times when I want to call her and ask her because I know she'd know.
Yeah.
Right, wrong, or otherwise, if she had to research it, she would find out the answer
Mm.
or interpret this medical stuff for me
Yeah.
because, my grandmother was a nurse.
Yeah.
Her my grandmother's sisters were nurses,
Yeah.
and then she did nursing school. She just didn't take the final exam because she had a fight with some teacher.
Yeah. Wow.
So,
Well, Jerica, thank you so much for everything you've shared. It's a wild and complex journey
it's
that you're on, and multitudes. There's just multitudes here.
oh, it's layer on layer. All I can think of is Shrek, the
Yeah.
onion. You just peel and there's something else underneath it. And every time I think I've hit a, a plateau, or at least nah, there's always more, you
Yeah.
know.
Yep.
And the holidays are the worst because, like last week, I was trying to. Last year, I had food poisoning from bad fried mushrooms at the bowling alley, so I didn't do Thanksgiving last year because I had gone out and no,
Yeah.
ooh, my oldest son and I were, because we're on the bowling league together, but yeah, we were out for the count the rest of that week.
Yeah.
Um, but this year, for the first time without her, I'm trying to replicate her. It was called kitchen sink dressing, and what
Mm.
it is she took all the leftover, like the giblets and ends and pieces of stuff that there's nothing wrong with, but you didn't want to like,
Yeah.
and she would saute all this stuff up and then add it into the dressing and then put lots of chopped nuts of different kinds, and and her dressing was a meal into itself. Okay, all the meat off the neck bone,
Wow.
very dense kind of dressing
Yeah.
that she would make, and you throw a little gravy on that, and and it keeps for a very long time because it's very dense. And I'm trying to replicate that, and I'm going, I know I'm missing something.
Yeah.
I just, and I mean, it's like I just want to grab the phone and say, hey,
Yeah.
okay, I put this and this and this, what am I missing?
Yeah.
And nobody else in the family who, my grandmother made that, my mother made that. Nobody's alive
Yeah.
who makes it. And I observe, I guess maybe in 50 years I could have probably put my hands in there and tried it myself once or twice, but I
It's not the way it tends to go. Yeah.
no, and it
Things
was like, oh, I'll
that
get the
die with our loved ones sometimes. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Jerica, thank you so much. I've
Thank
really
you.
enjoyed this conversation. Thank you for being here, and thank you for sharing.
Sorry it got dark.
No problem. No problem.
Well, it's hey, but I'm sitting here by the lake, and this is a great spot to come and think when you need to, just go to the park. Go to the
Yeah.
park, sit by the lake, something, just get out of your own head and out of your own. Because I mean, I can take my dogs and walk my dogs and everything around the house and do that the same routine, but sometimes I need to be away from routine. That's
Well,
yeah.
thank you for stepping away from routine and being here with
Thank
me.
you.
It's a pleasure.
All right. Well, you have